Okay, I think we're live here from today's event. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this event here today. Looking forward to have this event together, and hopefully we can have a great time here today. Today we will dive into the topics. Smarter go-to-market strategies for B2B sales and marketing teams together with our partner Demandbase, who's here with us. And you can see the full agenda in the handout section. So hopefully you can check out what we have up for you for the coming 2 hours in there. My name is Jacob Lundbrand. I'm the CEO of Bright Vision, and I'm trying to host here a little bit today. We'll also have one of the sessions presenting later on. But I also have to my help Leanne and Maria as well.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name's Leanne Chesko. I head up EMEA Marketing at Demandbase. Really happy to be here and excited to have you with us this morning. So I'll be one of the side hosts today. I'm going to be supporting Paul's session, asking you lots of poll questions as well. So get ready to answer and just making sure that you get any of your Demandbase specific questions answered.
And hi, and my name is Maria Vortneva, and I'm the intern at Bright Vision. Today I'll be coordinating and managing some of the Q&A sessions. So let's warm up in a chat box with some interactions. First of all, it will be fun and interesting to hear where in the world everyone is attending from. You can use the chat on the right-hand side of the screen to type and send. So let's see if we can get some chat action going. So where are you all from? Let's see. All right, we have UK here. Welcome. Sweden. Scotland, Germany, Norway and Spain, Belgium, Italy. Yeah, so nice to see that we have a lot of countries with us today. Welcome, everyone. Okay, so before our first speaker enters our virtual stage, we thought we'll get everyone warmed up.
Yes, I wanted to start off with one of our poll questions, and we'll have a few throughout the morning. So I thought it would just be a fun question to kind of kick off the session, just to understand how long everybody has been doing ABM. So the options are, we're just getting started, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 months plus, or you don't have any plans to start ABM. So you can take just a couple of seconds to answer that and submit your answers. Okay. Emily, I'm not seeing any poll responses come through.
Let's see here. We have some poll responses in, if you go to the polls and look at closed, you can see them there.
Here we go. Thank you so much. I was looking in the wrong place. So most of the audience, so 65% are we're just getting started. 13% are 3 to 6 months, 6% is 6 to 12 months, 13% 12 months plus, and only 3% no plans to start ABM. So majority are just getting started. So we've got lots of great content for you today. And for ones that are already kind of into their ABM programs, there'll also be some really good content around how you can expand your ABM programs as well. So thanks for participating in that.
Exciting.
All right. So Jacob, would you like to tell the audience a bit about the reason why we're hosting this event today?
Absolutely. So one of the reasons is that we work together with the demand base as a partner, and they are really good at ABM and data and things like that are so important for B2B marketeers these days, because so many companies are investing in their platforms and the processes and things going forward, that we will spend 2 hours coming up here now discussing and giving examples of how to work and what to do and things like that. And as we see, there's a lot of companies just starting out on the journey with ABM and go-to-market strategies and things like that. So hopefully we can share a few insights for B2B tech marketeers here today that are interested in getting new inspiration, getting up to date on the latest in ABM and tech stacks and things like that. So hopefully everybody can have some good ideas and takeaways with them after we're done here today.
So we've put together a couple of attendee offers for you all today as well, which we'll hope you'll take advantage of. So from Demandbase, we've got something that we offer called a pipeline acceleration report. And we're also offering a 25% platform discount for any platform deals signed before the end of September this year. That the pipeline acceleration report is something that is customized to your business. So you would basically have a list of accounts that would be in market for your products and services and solutions today. So we work with you to provide us some data on the typical accounts that you sell into, the types of keywords that they would be searching on, and then you get a sneak peek of some of those accounts that perhaps aren't already on your radar. So highly, recommend that you take advantage of that today.
And also we from Bright Vision have a small treat here for everybody who's interested, that you can get a 60 minutes workshop or free consulting if you're interested in to discuss these things that we will go over here today. So please reach out if you're interested in that as well, and click on the offer. Okay, here's the agenda for today. I won't go through all the details here. I think we have 4 really great topics that we will go over. You can find it in the handout section up to the upper right area in the application. And with that, I think we'll go over some housekeeping with Maria.
Yes, just a few things to remember before we started. It's quite a high tempo today. We'll have 4 presentations until around 12 p.m. You can log in and log off as many times as you want. And feel free to comment on today's program or tweet. You can use the hashtag provided and tag Bright Vision and Demandbase. And we will have a short Q&A session after each speaker, so feel free to send your questions in the chat box. And having said that, I think we're ready to go. Let's go.
Yeah, so I want to start by introducing my colleague, Paul Gibson. He's our VP International here at Demandbase, and he's got 2 really great sessions around unlocking the secrets to achieving skyrocketing growth, and one on how to use data and account intelligence for a smarter go-to-market. So we've been around since 2007, and our premise really is all around transforming how B2B companies go to market. And I won't talk through all the different timelines on this slide, but essentially we have a full kind of suite to really help your sales and marketing teams know what accounts are in market. We use intent data to surface that type of account intelligence information. We have an advertising platform. Paul's going to walk you through a full demo, but essentially it enables you to make sure that you know that you're targeting, the right companies based on who they are, that they're showing all these types of buying signals, but also that, you can engage with them intelligently throughout those different areas of the buying process as well. We've got 1,200 customers. We've got a huge team here in Europe based out of the UK to support our EMEA customers. And we work with some of the best B2B brands around. And I think Paul's just rejoining us now. So some of the stuff that Paul's going to cover is what is ABX and why it is important. And then he'll cover some tips on how to get started with ABX. He'll go into a bit of a demo so you can get more of an overview of the demand-based platform, and then we'll conclude his session with some Q&A.
I'm actually going to share my screen because there's quite a bit to go through in this session in regards to a few slides, but also we're going to actually have a look at some products as well as we go through my two sessions today. So I'm going to share my screen. So if, again, Leanne, once I've done this, if you could put a thumbs up to say that, that you're able to see this. Bear with me a second. Let me get this going. And hopefully now what you can see is my screen, not showing what I want to show yet, but hopefully showing something. And if I now go to my presentation mode, we should get to the stage that you can actually see my screen now. So let me just change my settings. So I'm going to gamble now and hope that what you can see is my slide deck. And apologies for the stumbling start, but now we can get going. I believe from what I could see that Leanne's already taken you through demand-based, who we are, our evolution over the years, so I'm going to leave that one for now. But what I am going to do is take you through a few things. So ABX, ABM, it's terminology that's been around for a long time. It's evolving as we move forward, so I'll just spend a couple of minutes talking around that. Then we'll actually look at some of the processes around why ABX, why ABM is probably more important now than it's ever been in the B2B world. Some of the tactics and elements to think about. And then, as I say, the second part of my session is really to dig in and say, right, okay, that's the theory behind it. How does technology help actually work in this environment? So I'm going to work through that and we'll progress as we go through. So let's get started. So ABX, what is it? Well, ABM, as most of you said in the poll that you were going through, have some awareness of it. Many of you are undertaking it. There's a few that aren't, but hopefully after today's session, you'll also see the benefits and want to understand and get involved more in an ABM, ABX approach. But what do we really mean? ABX is, in essence, is an evolution of ABM. Account-based marketing is something that I think every organization should undertake if they're in the B2B world, because it basically means that you're focusing all your efforts on those companies that are a good fit and you can sell to. And why would you do anything else? So account-based approach makes perfect sense. But now there's that feeling that we have to treat people differently depending where they are on their buyer journey. And therefore, customer experience is a very big buzzword also at the moment, making sure where someone is on their buyer cycle, we treat them differently, give them different content, messaging, etc. ABX is a combination of the both. And really get it, if you're able to harness the correct data and the insights on a 360-degree view of a company, which we'll touch on a bit later, it helps you make sure that when you're messaging and engaging with these organizations, it's relevant. You become a trusted brand and organization for those people, and follow them through a buyer journey or a customer life cycle and treat them differently as they approach those different milestones, so that you're always hitting them with something that's relevant to them at that time. And it's really important that sales, marketing, pre-sales, post-sales, demand gen, everyone is working off the same hymn sheet, so that they're giving the same impression to the organization that you're trying to deal with around your brand, your offerings, etc. And really, it's a GTM, go-to-market strategy. That's what everyone calls it now, whether you're in pre-sales, post-sales, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in customer success. It's really important that your strategy is the same throughout the organization, because it's much more likely to be effective. Now, what's changed in the last couple of years, due to the unfortunate arrival of COVID and the work-from-home environment we've all had, things like trade shows, field events, face-to-face meetings have disappeared. And I'm glad to say we still have lots of events like the one we're all attending today, and very slowly we're starting to see in-person events come back. But it's actually meant over the last couple of years that the way B2B sales and marketing have had to work has changed dramatically. Gone are the days you could go to a trade show, pick up some opportunities and start working them. It's now dependent on organizations and the people you're trying to sell to, knowing who you are and filling in forms and things like that. We spoke to so many people who scarily said their strategy was, if someone fills out a form, we'll target them. Otherwise, it's fingers crossed, we don't really know what to do. And that's really dangerous from two points of view, really. One, by the time someone fills out a form and raises their hand, they're right at the end of their buyer journey, and it's very hard for sales or marketing to have any real influence at that late stage. But more importantly, what if that good fit in-market organization has never heard of you before? They're not going to find your website because they don't know who you are, so you're going to miss that opportunity completely. So it's become more and more relevant to understand when a good fit company starts showing relevant buying signals at the beginning of that buyer journey, which they're now doing digitally more and more. You're aware of it. So you can understand, here's an organization I need to start working with. And if I don't raise awareness at this early stage, they're never going to find our website or fill out a form. So it's changed completely. And I think what we're seeing is this is now something that buyers are doing consistently. Whether we open up trade shows and field events and face-to-face meetings in the future, this is now indoctrinated in as something that they do as a big part of their buyer journey. They'll do lots of offline research. They'll anonymously come to your website and look at stuff long before they ever identify themselves. And so technologies like Demand-Based are allowing organizations to identify those signals, but more importantly, start engaging in that early stages. So those organizations get the feeling that you're an organization they should be dealing with, and they're much more likely to eventually raise their hand. Now, importantly, if you're getting control of that buyer journey from the beginning, at the point they do raise their hand, they're a long way down the buyer journey, but they're a long way down your buyer journey. They're understanding your USPs, the values you can offer. So what we're actually producing is opportunities that we pass to sales that are much further down the funnel, understanding your value. So we see the time to close reducing quite dramatically. The close rates going up because what we're providing is good fit our companies understanding our USPs and value. And the average order value is staying higher because we've been selling the value from the beginning. So this is something that is now the way that the majority of B2B buyers work. They won't speak to sales until a lot further down the journey, but we don't want to cross our fingers and hope that they get to that stage. We want to take control of it. So it's completely transformed the world we live in today. But we all have limits, right? We all have limited time, budget, and resource. And so we need to make sure that all of those valuable resources are utilized in the right way. For instance, we speak to lots of organizations that admit that they spend a big percentage of their advertising budget on companies they can't sell to. In fact, they provide leads and opportunities to sales that in reality they can't sell to. And it seems crazy to me that we spend any of that precious resource going after companies that we can't target. So it's really important to understand if you've got a limited budget, let's make sure every penny, every dollar, every second of that is spent just targeting those organizations that we as a business know we can sell to. It's actually quite surprising. We speak to lots of organizations who say that in reality, they don't know where their advertising budget goes. They get lots of clicks. They don't know who's clicking on it. They have no idea if it's getting to their target audience or not. They don't know if it's going in brand safe places or not. Which again, in this day and age, when there's technologies like Demand-Based that can guarantee that those impressions only go to your target accounts, only in the places where your brands are going to be safe and somewhere you want to be seen, it just makes sense to have that approach. Now, something that comes up a lot, we do a lot of events and we're often asked, what comes first in an account-based approach? Is it strategy or is it technology? Well, actually, it's a combination of both. And if you try and do one without the other, it's unlikely to be successful. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're building out a strategy to say this is what we're going to do in the next 12, 24 months, you can't do it without data. Otherwise, again, your strategy is literally guesswork. So what we say is get the data that helps you drive that strategy, and then your strategy will be much more relevant to the business and much more successful. And when we talk about data, we're talking about things like off-site intent, buying signals that those key accounts that you're interested in are showing long before they ever speak to you. What they're doing on your website, often anonymously, because we all know one or two people in a target account, but we won't know the whole buyer committee. Combine all of that and you start getting an understanding of, okay, that's a company we should focus on because they're showing really relevant buying signals. Are they engaging with us? When they come to the website, are they getting to that relevant content? What are they seeing? Are they bouncing right at the very beginning, in which case we need to think about that sort of stuff? Are they talking to sales? Are they responding to emails? Are they attending events? Where are they on the buyer journey? Because as I said at the beginning, depending where on the buyer journey, we should give very different messages. And the ability to combine that anonymous activity with the buying committee you already know means you can get a 360-degree view of your target audience really start to understand where they are, what they're doing, and then that's the basis of building out a strategy. And then, of course, we put that strategy into place. We interpret the data, we decide what actions to do, where to prioritize our efforts. For instance, we might see a group of companies showing really strong buying signals out there in the B2B world, but not yet talking to us, not engaging at all. Maybe they don't know who we are. So it makes sense that that group of organizations needs to go into an awareness campaign of some sort. We might see there's a group of companies that are coming to the website, but never getting past the homepage. Well, we need to look at an engagement strategy that means when they arrive, they see something relevant to them based on their industry, the size, etc. And then, of course, knowing all these things allows us to understand which channels we really need to be utilizing to have our best results. And that, again, comes back to the technology side. If you're reaching out to those companies that never heard of you, you can't email them, you don't know who they are, they don't know who you are, so an advertising strategy makes perfect sense. If you do know buyers within those organizations that aren't engaging, you throw them into an email cadence through your marketing automation, your sales enablement tools, etc. We can utilize social, even direct mail, and we at Demandbase utilize direct mail quite a lot. It's becoming one of those things that's more and more relevant. And then, of course, we get into that cycle of, okay, well, that's what happened. Now what do we do next? Let's look at the data again, and let's alter our strategy as we need to. So it's a combination of both, and all I would suggest is don't try doing one without the other. Use the data to build relevant strategies, and then use the technology to help put those strategies into action, and then it makes sense as an ABX strategy. Now, one thing that we hear a lot is a term that we use is fragmented data. But in reality, what we're talking about here is the sales team traditionally live in their CRM system. The web team look at the website stats and start coming up with concepts. You'll have the advertising campaign team looking at results and trying to work out what they're doing there. And so what you end up with different teams within the organization looking at different data and maybe coming up with different interpretations of what the strategy is. That's really dangerous because it means potentially you're going off and doing different things for the same people. It means that they're probably going to be ineffective in terms of the results. But more importantly, it's very confusing for the client. We're trying to build brand awareness and we're trying to build trust in our organization. And if sales are talking to them in a different way than marketing are and the adverts are saying something different, it really is dangerous. So we really need to find a way of bringing all that data together. And I'll show you some examples of what I mean later on, where everyone in the business, whether it's sales, whether it's pre or post sales, whether it's marketing, are all looking at the same data, coming up with the same strategies, working together on that so that they can make sure they align the messaging. So for instance, if we see someone at the very beginning of their buyer journey, it's brilliant that sales are aware of that, but you don't want sales reaching out to them at that point. It's too early. But it really is good for them to know that marketing and nurturing them and getting them into a stage that sales at some point will be getting together. But if they're all looking at different data, that's very difficult. So it's a really important thing to try and get all of your relevant data, your known, your anonymous audience, all together so you've got a 360-degree view of all their activities from that organization. It makes your strategy much more relevant and effective and makes the customer feel that whoever they speak to within your organization understands them and can offer them the same messaging. We touched on this already, that ability to make sure your messaging is relevant for all of those different buyer stages and buyer journeys is really, really important. A couple of examples here that we think are really relevant. If you say, as I mentioned at the beginning, we see an organization, we know they're a really good fit for us, they're the perfect type of organization, they're showing really relevant buying signals. Right now they've never visited our website, they've never spoken to anyone. The worst thing we can do is hit them with a sales call. They don't even know who we are, and the defenses will almost certainly get up. This is the time for marketing to start building some trust around the brand, getting them thinking, this is an organization that looks good, looks someone I could work with, they seem to understand what we're doing. Then they can start showing some early stages of interest, then put some thought leadership around there, start educating them on not just you as a business, but your expertise in that space. Of course, once they start showing engagement, they come to the website, they start reading white papers, etc., etc., that is the time, often when they're still anonymous, that is the time where sales start going, right, we need to start working with marketing here to get out there and in front of them. And once they turn into opportunities and those opportunities are entering the closing parts of that buyer journey, that's when, again, marketing and sales work together to validate that you are the right decision for them. Working with you, understanding you, the sort of clients you work with, those case studies and peer white papers are really where you need to be putting that in front of them to get them over the line. And then, of course, once they become a customer, it's that post-sales experience. Can we help them feel good? Can we make sure they're adopting all of our best practice and getting the most out of the solution, and also identifying opportunities to upsell in the future? So it's very much, this is where ABX comes in, if you like, that account-based approach, but taking into account that customer experience side of things. So we're making sure that all the way through the funnel, those customers and prospects are getting the right experience for them at the right time. And there's lots of ways you can do it, as we said before, and we'll show some examples a little bit later on, where they are in the buyer journey, the type of organization they are, the industry they're in, the size they're in, the buyer stage they're in. They're all different things that you need to take into account. But if you understand all of that, you can get really effective messages in front of all those people at the right time. If you don't do that, there's a real risk. For instance, if you don't know the full buyer committee, if you don't have an understanding of not just the people that sales may know within the organization, but the anonymous buying committee and the buying signals they're showing, there's a real risk you're going to miss out on that opportunity altogether, or at least not be effective. We all know the multi-threading messaging that's out there. You need to understand all of those buyer stakeholders, even if you don't physically identify them as a person. You need to see their buying behavior and react accordingly. If you don't understand all of that, you don't know who you're going to target. You potentially end up spending a lot of your time and budget focused on the wrong people with the wrong accounts, companies that maybe you can't sell to, or aren't in market, or aren't interested. So it's really important to bring that all together. Otherwise, you miss opportunities. The buyers that you're trying to work with get really frustrated because they're getting mixed messages. And of course, down the line, the business doesn't get the results we want, and the C-level get very unhappy. So that's the problem. And I think it's something that we can all share. We will probably all agree with that there's limited time, budget, and resource. We've got to make sure it's all focused in the right areas. We don't want to miss out on opportunities that don't know about us. If we can identify them and raise that awareness, it makes sense. We want to make sure we understand the anonymous buying committee as well as the known buying committee. And if we don't understand all of those things, we're likely to miss out on opportunities. So what's the solution? And of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased here, but ABX is a solution. It makes sense, right? You need to firstly start by understanding and building out that account foundation. Which companies do we want to go after? Who's showing the right buying signals out there? And then reach out and identify all of those buying signals. As we said before, we'll show some examples in a minute, but if you know that that's a really good ICP fit company and they're showing relevant buying signals, that's fantastic. And then we can start engaging with them with relevance. We can build all of that knowledge, put to campaigns together, etc., and get some really exciting messaging we know that's going to resonate and that's going to drive those anonymous companies that probably we wouldn't have even known about before suddenly into engaged opportunities that we can close. We can close those deals, we can expand their relationships, we can get customer success and get them growing those accounts, retaining those accounts. And of course, what is equally as important is the ability to prove this back to the business. We speak to quite a few organizations who, for instance, do advertising campaigns, and they report back to the business a click-through rate. We got a click-through rate of 0.7% and we delivered 1 million impressions. Right. Well, who are you delivering those impressions to? Who's actually clicking on the ads? Are you getting in front of our key accounts? Where are we delivering that insight? If you're not able to produce answers to any of those, I'm amazed that CFOs ever sign on a budget that says, okay, well, you can go and throw some ad budget somewhere and hopefully we'll get some clicks. I'm sure that's not really what they want to see. If you can sit there and say, and we will deliver adverts to these 100 companies and we will tell you how many impressions we delivered to each, what budget we spent on each, what the results were, did we drive them to the website, did that turn into an opportunity, and align that all back, your campaigns attributing success around each of those accounts, that's hugely valuable for the business. And imagine your sales and marketing meetings when you're sitting there and saying, hey, you wanted us to go after that account. They weren't actually talking to us at all, but we identified they were in market. We now did an advertising campaign where we delivered 1,000 impressions to them. It cost us $100, but what we've now delivered is 47 visits to the site. 3 people got to that high-value piece of content we put there, and now we've got an opportunity, and 2 people are attending a sales event next week. It's just account-based messaging and measurement as opposed to cosmetic metrics, we think some of those clicks might be relevant. Different approach, but it's the way B2B companies really should work. And of course, it's important to have a global view on all of these things. We speak to lots of organizations who say technology we're using is great in America, but it doesn't work outside. So just worth noting that you know, there are organizations like Demandbase out there that have really good coverage across the globe, which means whether you're doing local or global campaigns, you're getting some real success there and identifying those organizations that matter to you most. So how does Demandbase as a technology work? Well, we actually bring all of your known and anonymous data together in one place to give you that 360-degree profile we're talking about. What do I mean by that? So you'll have a CRM system almost certainly, and you'll have contacts in there, you'll have marketing automation systems, you'll be running corporate email, you'll have your website visits, etc. And so those people that you know will be activated and working in those different environments. We can capture all of that. We pull that into Demandbase. But we also pull all of that data that we've been talking around the anonymous, the unknown buyer committee out there. So if you've got the ability to take the known audience from a particular organization, tie it in with the buyer committee anonymously acting out there, excuse me, what the companies are anonymously doing when they come to your website, if someone's going out there and looking at an ad or being delivered an ad, bringing it all together, it allows us to get that 360-degree profile we're talking about, which we can then segment into relevant audiences for different activities. And then from within Demandbase, you can actually orchestrate that through the different channels, be that your website, your advertising, your email cadences, social posts, whatever it may be. And then, as I said before, you can then measure the success of those accounts on an account-by-account basis across all of your activity. And we can actually actively deliver that through a portfolio of different channels out there. So, as we said, we have the advertising capability we'll talk about. We have the ability to fire things through your email cadences, be that through your sales enablement tools or your CRM, marketing automation tools, etc. We have the ability to post things through elements like Slack. We have the ability to look at your corporate emails. We can identify information through Adobe, Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, and deliver posts through there as well. LinkedIn, it's a comprehensive capability. So it's that ability to bring all of that data together in one place, understand the data, build out strategies, and then deliver on that data, all from within a seamless platform. Now I'm going to move on to the second part of the presentation now. I'm a little bit blind, as in I can't see or hear anyone else, so I'm going to plow on. I hope that's all right, and I'm not causing any confusion from anyone. I'll move on to the second part of my presentation because we started a little bit late. This is really understanding, okay, we've talked about the concepts. Now, okay, if we've got that sort of data, how can we actually utilize it? So I'm going to do something fairly revolutionary. I'm actually going to go in and show you some software and how you can utilize all of this powerful data we've spoken about to actually action some of the strategies you'll put in place. So let's just start with a few basics. We've talked about the sort of data that Demandbase can understand. The first thing to say really is when we build out intent, i.e. buying signals that are relevant to you, they're built specifically for each of our clients. So we have a unique capability to sit with you and understand what are those keywords and terms and potentially competitors, etc., that are relevant to you, that if you see someone showing buying signals around that, it means that right now that is a company that's in market that you need to engage with. We also have the ability to look at your website. So you stick a small piece of JavaScript on your website to understand all of that known and anonymous activity that's going on your website. And this is really important, right? Because if you understand what they're doing off your website and what they're doing on your website, you can start to build out a strategy of when these organizations even know who you are, whether they're getting to high value content, etc. And on that, we have the ability, again, to build engagement metrics 100% relevant to you as a business. You know what's relevant to you. You know if it's someone comes to a particular page on your website, if they respond to a particular email, that means they're higher value. If they're in this particular role, that means they're higher value. And we allow you to build out engagement metrics that mean every time you see something in engagement and we report on how engaged someone is, it makes complete sense to you, your business, and how your engagement metrics are structured. Really, really powerful. So we're starting to build out that picture now. We're understanding the anonymous and the known activity on and off of your website. We're now starting to build out engagement metrics that make sense to you as a business. And then we can equally build out buyer journeys that are completely relevant to yourself. So you probably as a business have set up buyer journeys, MQLs, SQLs, whatever it may be, that your sales team completely understand, your business understands what they are. If you suddenly start giving them different metrics, someone's at this stage in a buyer journey, which doesn't make sense to them, it's not going to give the sales any feeling that there's any benefit in getting this information. So instead, we map completely to your buyer journeys. If you haven't got buyer journeys set up yet, yes, we have out-of-the-box metrics we can utilize, and they can be adjusted as time goes on. But the power of demand-based really is that we were building a system behind the scenes that effectively means you have exactly what you need in your business to mirror the requirements that you have as a business. And then once we've understood, okay, these are a group of companies that we should be focusing on, this is where they are on the buyer journey, this is what metrics they are showing, this is how engaged they are, this is a strategy we need to build in. We then have the ability to take that and enhance the data you've already got in your CRM, your marketing automation system. So we can look at those accounts that you're particularly interested in and then supplement that, enhance the data, clean the data, etc. So what you're working on then from a sales and marketing perspective is a really clean set of accurate data. And rather than going out and just buying bucket loads of data that may or may not be relevant, by having this approach, the data that you're buying is the data that you as a business need, and it means that the sales and marketing function is working really well. And then, as I said, the idea being at the end of all of this, when you're reporting back to the business, you can do it on an account-by-account basis. Let's look at that group of organizations. Maybe it's a particular vertical or a region or a target market or a campaign audience you've been working with. How are we affecting that group of companies? Are we driving them through the funnel? Are we turning them into opportunities? Are we getting those companies that weren't engaging with us now engaging with us? Are we accelerating them through the funnel? And really powerful metrics that mean when you talk to the business, it's no longer those cosmetic metrics around click-through rates and impressions and whatever it is. It's now proper data, understanding how you're having a real effect on those organizations. So that's if you like, the building blocks behind it. I'm now actually going to switch slides, and so bear with me a second. I'm just going to come out of this, and I'm going to go into my platform. And we're now going to have a look at demand-based as a platform. So hopefully, if this is working correctly, you can all still hear me and see me, and we're now looking at demand-based. I'm just going to give you a few ideas of how technology like this really can enable sales and marketing to work together and be much more effective. What you can see here is an outline of the software. That's not so important, but throughout the system, we have something called selectors. Now, selectors are really invaluable because that allows you as an organization to pick and choose all of the data that's relevant to you and build that into a particular audience for a particular task. So, for instance, we talked about the ability to have a look at all of your data that's in your CRM, your marketing automation systems, etc. So you can pick and choose the data that's relevant to yourself. What we can also do is sit there and go, okay, I'm going to build a very specific one, but I also want to utilize the anonymous activity we've seen, the intent data, the website traffic, the journey stages, etc. I'm going to build a very simple example for you here. I'm going to look at software companies, but the software companies I'm going to look at are only those ones that are a really good fit, and only those ones that at the moment are showing really relevant buying signals. I think there was a question that came through, actually. The DSP, any limitation in terms of markets? I think I'll touch on the DSP a little bit later anyway, but in reality, we have a portfolio across the globe of whitelisted, brand-safe, B2B sites and publishers where we deliver our adverts. We have 100% control because it's our own DSP of who we deliver the adverts to and also where. So you can guarantee it's brand-safe, it's good quality sites and publishers around the globe. But I hope that answered that question that came through, Leanne. I think I got a ping on my phone to say that question was answered. But any more questions, I'll try and answer them as we go through. So what we're building here then is that audience that we spoke about. So industry is computer software companies, but we only want those ones that are a good fit, i.e. they're the right size, they're the right region, etc., etc. But actually only those ones that are showing buying signals in the right place. So I can save that audience away, And then I can go to a dashboard, and we're not going to go through the whole product here, don't worry. But the dashboard in itself gives you lots of really good information around those organisations, who are the most engaged, et cetera, which is really valuable. What buying signals that group of companies are showing. Are they seeing stuff across your website that is relevant? Contacts coming through from your CRM marketing automation system for those particular organisations. But what we're going to focus on, just to continue our discussion, is around where are these organisations in the buyer journey? So I click on journeys here, and we now have all of those different organisations split out by where they are in the buyer journey. And remember, if you went out of the box, this is what you get as the buyer journey. This is what demand-based start as, but we would build that very specifically for you to map your own buyer journeys. Where this becomes immensely powerful is we're sitting now looking at how many companies are in each stage, how long they're staying in each stage, and if we've got a bottleneck. And we can see here that there's a lot of companies that are showing an awareness phase, but not getting any further, and they seem to be stuck there. Now, in demand-based terminology, aware means they're showing really relevant buying signals off of our website. So they're a good fit, and they're a good fit computer software company, we know that, and they're showing really relevant buying signals, but they're not engaging with us at all. And again, we have that choice. We can cross our fingers and hope that what they see is relevant, or we can actually start taking control of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight that bar. And what it does, it identifies all of those companies that we have in that stage. So there's a lot of companies here that are showing really relevant buying signals, but right now aren't even talking to us. I'm not prepared to just cross my fingers and hope that they actually get engaging with us. I'm going to start taking control of that buyer journey. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight that group of companies, and you'll see this button, Take Action, appears. And of course, what's it going to do? It's going to allow us to take action. So when I click on that button, it opens up a multitude of different options that we can work on. So if we have people that we know within the organisation, we can throw them into email cadences, we can update tasks in CRM, etc. But for this particular organisation, for this particular example, this is a group of organisations we've identified as a good fit. We've identified they're showing relevant buying signals, but we've also identified that they're not talking to us. They've never engaged with us. I'm not going to be able to email these people, but what I can do is start doing some advertising to raise awareness of our brand in those organisations. So I'm going to use that group of companies to run an advertising campaign. And again, still within the same platform, it opens up our advertising capability. So within Demand-Based One, we have our own unique DSP that we've built. It's allowing us to control who we send, where we send, what we send, and it's an immensely powerful, unique capability that there's no one else in the marketplace that has it. So that's great. So we're taking that group of software companies we've spoken about. I'm going to decide how much budget I want to spend. I'm going to decide how long I want that campaign to run for. I'm going to decide if I want very specifically down to a country, a state, a region where I want to deliver these ads. I could also be very specific around keywords, because if we're targeting, let's say, an HSBC where there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees, I'm interested in the ones that are showing relevant buying signals. Now, this is a really key thing to talk about. Personas are very important. If we sell marketing software, we want to sell to the CMO, of course. But the CMO may be really busy, and they may say to two of their colleagues, go and find me the 3 best, digital advertising platforms out there. Once you've got that shortlist, come back to me. If we sit and wait for the CMO, we may miss out on that opportunity because we're only targeting the CMO. Demand-Based's view is, let's look at the behavior of the people within that organization, make sure they're relevant. And if they're showing relevant buying signals, if they're searching all the right things, talking to our competitors, I don't care what their job title is, I want to get in front of them and make sure that they're aware. Of course, if we see it's a CMO, we can change the message, etc. But it's really important that we focus on the people in that business who are showing the relevant buying signals. Then I've got that relevant piece of content I want to use, and then I publish it. Now, the importance of this is, in 4 clicks of the mouse, we've said, help me identify IT companies that are a good fit, that are showing really relevant buying signals, that right now haven't engaged with us at all, so we're likely to miss out on those opportunities, and throw them into an advertising campaign, which means the next time we see one of those organizations showing those relevant buying signals on those safe B2B sites and publishers, we hit them with an ad that explains why you as an organization are someone that they should investigate. Really, really powerful. and hugely effective. Every impression is only going to those companies that are relevant, and then you can report back, as I said, on each of those accounts. You can see where those ads were delivered. You can see who they were delivered to. You can see how much you spent on that particular account. You can see how that's affected their engagement on your website, talking to sales, etc., and attribute it all back to the campaign. So hugely effective. Now that's anonymous buying committees and the ability to take control of it, which is huge, especially in the GDPR world. We can't go emailing and contacting people that we think we might have the right person unless they're consented in. This allows you to get engaged with that entire buyer committee from the very beginning of the buyer journey. But we may know individuals within that organization. And again, demand-based can help there. So for instance, in this particular example here, we're now able to say, okay, so those organizations that are showing those buying signals, I'm only interested in a particular job level or function, whatever it may be, but show me the actual people that we've pulled through from our CRM marketing automation system. Because we know those people, they're consented in, we've got their email address, so we can start nurturing them. But we can see here that Adam, who works for EnergySoft, we've identified they're one of those IT companies we want to go after. He wasn't really engaged at one point, but no one's spoken to him. And in fact, no one in sales has even tried to reach out to him for at least 2 weeks. Of course, sales should be made aware of that, and I'll show you in a second how we actually do that. But as importantly, I want to make sure that I, as a marketer, are ensuring that Adam is getting the same messaging that that anonymous buying committee is getting. So I'm going to tick this box, and this time when I take action, it does make sense to throw them into an email cadence. So that could be through my marketing automation system. It could be updating tasks for people in CRM, or it could indeed be sticking them into sales enablement. If you use something like a sales loft or an outreach or something like that, throw them into a cadence there. So in effect, we're taking control of the buyer committee, whether they're anonymous or known, making sure that the messaging they're getting is relevant based on where they are in the buyer journey, the buying signals they're showing, the organization, the industry, etc., and taking complete control of it. Now, we're doing this in 1 or 2 clicks, but actually the system is clever enough over time to learn from this. So when you have the confidence to do so, this can all be automated. So every day it can go through and say, show me people where they work at a technology company that is showing buying signals in this, haven't spoken to us for at least 2 weeks, but we have them as a consented in person, throw them automatically into a nurture stream. If we see that IT organization showing buying signals and we don't know people in there, automatically throw them into an advertising sequence, add them to that audience, etc. So it gives you as sales and marketing people to concentrate on coming up with ideas and strategies and selling, which is obviously what we all want to do, not the manual tasks. I'm just going to check because I think there might have been another question coming through. So I think the question was around creatives. Yes, we have the ability to identify, to utilize multiple creatives. You can look at those different creatives and see which ones are resonating, which ones aren't. And also we have the ability to personalize those creatives. So for instance, in one piece of creative content, we can identify, because demand-based identifies things like the industry, the region, the size of the business, you can change the messaging in that particular creative based on that. So if we see HSBC, we'll give them a message related to financial services. If we see Tesco, we'll give them a retail message, all from within the same creative. I hope that answered that question. Now, if all of this is successful, we're getting those companies that maybe weren't engaging with us at all before to understand that we're someone that they trust. They're likely to come to our website to find out more. And again, we don't want to be in that cross-fingers approach of saying, I hope when they come to the website, it's relevant enough, and they get down those different streams to get to that relevant case study, because that will be really valuable for them. We want to make sure they see that. And again, within demand-based, we have the ability to control what they see when either anonymously or the known audience comes onto your website to make sure they're getting the most value and engagement when they arrive. So again, we'll use that computer software example we were talking about, and we can add, again, any of these metrics in. So we could say if they're at a stage in the buyer journey, if they've engaged with sales, if they've attended an event, all of these different options come up. I'll keep it simple for the time we've got today. We want to say if a computer software company now comes to our website and they visit this page, so stick in the URL, most of this content's fine, the images are fine, this content's really relevant, but I'd like to make this message a little bit more relevant to computer software so they think that we're, or understand that we're much better at understanding their industry. So I'm going to take that particular item and I'm going to change this text. So basically, next time a software comes onto our site, a software company, comes onto our website, the first thing they see is a message like this: we help software companies. And if they're a customer or they're at least stage 3 in the buyer journey, I'm happy to call out their company name. I wouldn't recommend doing it any earlier, but that's certainly a way of giving them that feeling, oh, okay, they work with software companies, brilliant, I want to find out more. A really simple example, but a really powerful example, and just changing things like the industry message, the business from message from enterprise to mid-market, etc., regional messages make a huge difference in the levels of engagement that we're seeing. Now, everything we're seeing here is tying together, as we said, that known, the anonymous audience, understanding the buyer journey and the engagement, and building out strategies, and then acting on those strategies, hugely effective, but also sales want to get involved in this as well. Now, I can say this because I'm a salesperson. We can be a bit lazy. We won't want to go and learn a new system like Demandbase to get hold of this data, but we know how valuable it would be if we could get it. So therefore, Demandbase has put all of this data in the hands of the salespeople in the places where they live. So for instance, in the CRM system, we can see that we can pull through all of the data. So if I live in the sales in a CRM system every day of the year, I'm seeing now all the accounts that I work with. I can see things like where they are in the buyer journey, qualification stage, predictions, which we won't touch on today, but a really powerful part of Demandbase. I can go into one of these accounts, let's say Lionbridge. I'm interested in seeing whether I should be spending time with them. Let me drill into Lionbridge. Okay, I can see here the deal story. So I can see every engagement they've had as an organization with marketing and with sales. So I can see we're starting to get some engagement. That gives me a bit of confidence. For Lionbridge, I can see the buying signals they're showing off of our website. So I can start exploring, okay, if I do speak to these people, I can see that these are the things that I really need to be focusing on, because that's what that buying committee there is showing signs of. I can also see the key people in that business that we know that I should be focusing my efforts on. So Ian has responded to a campaign. He's been all over our website looking at this, that, and the other. So I know I should be phoning Ian, having a conversation around those particular subjects that we've seen, and know that he's also attended an event, he's done, etc., etc. So really useful information for me as a salesperson. I can see all, if I want to, the activities that have been undertaken here from that organization. The anonymous activity, the off-site buying signals, people who have been engaging with our content that we know. And interestingly here, I mentioned at the beginning, we build engagement metrics that make sense to you. It's clear here that Jerry and Lawrence are both responded to the same campaign, but they have different job titles. So the cost or the scoring against them is different. Lawrence has got twice the score that Jerry has because he's a much more senior person. We can also, if we want, look at, are we actually getting into that organization? Are we getting that moldy threading approach we want? And it's good to see here that we're actually getting engagement from the stakeholders who ultimately will be making that decision. If we saw that this was empty, we'd probably work with marketing to come up with a strategy to increase our awareness. And if we want, we can have complete view of every element of communication we've had. We can see that these people here had a meeting. We can see that these people had a meeting as well. These attended one of our events, etc., etc. Hugely powerful. If for whatever reason the salespeople don't live in CRM, we put it into things like Slack as well. So we get alerts. And here's a real-life alert saying that Lionbridge came on our website and read these particular articles. Off of our website, they were showing these particular buying signals. And Emily, one of the people we know, was one of the people doing that. So I can confidently pick up the phone to Emily, knowing the conversation I have can be relevant based on what I know that that business is interested in. I'm also getting a kick that one of my opportunities, I haven't spoken to him for at least 2 weeks. So I'm getting a nudge to say, hey, you've got to speak to them. And finally, we also have the ability to put reports, emails, daily digest, weekly, monthly, of all the information that's relevant to that organization in the places where they live, on the bits that are relevant to them in email. So you've got email, you've got chat, you've got directly into CRM. So sales are getting a complete picture as well of everything that's going on. I'm conscious I've done this a million miles an hour. I think I'm just coming up to my time slot finishing anyway. So I'll stop at that point and go back into the screen, into the system. And hopefully you can see me now. And I'm talking. I've got a video there that looks like it's me, so hopefully you can hear me. The summary I would like to make really is that everything we've talked about today is helping your sales, your marketing, pre and post sales, get a clear picture of that 360-degree approach understand the known and the anonymous buying committee, build strategies together, and then put those strategies in action, taking into account things like the buyer journey, the industry, where they are, and making sure that it's a joined up approach, because that's better for you as a business. It's also hugely effective and much better for the client at the end of the day. Leanne, I don't know if I can hear you or not, but you hopefully heard me, and that came across clearly.
We do.
So
Can you hear me at all?
thank you everyone for your time. I hope that was a useful session. I don't know if I can hear you, Leanne, if you're going to speak now, but I'll try.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but you did the questions that we had, you answered. So thank you. And I was just checking if we had any more questions. I think we answered the ones during the sessions now. So let me just check. No, I'm not seeing any in the Q&A. We covered the ones earlier. What I thought would be useful was to cover the rest of the poll questions that we have planned to do. So I think let's do that before we go into the next session. And there's 4 poll questions coming your way, so get ready to answer them. And the first one that we'd like to know is, what is the main focus of your business for 2022? Is it new logo acquisition? Is it account retention? Or is it account growth? So if we can take just a couple of seconds to answer that and submit your answers. You can see some of the answers coming in. We did have a question. I'm going to submit that to Paul. I'll let him do that just as we are waiting for the polls. Let's have a look. So most of people, their main focus for their business for 2022 is account growth. So 58%, 38% is on new logo acquisition, and 4% on account retention. So that's really interesting to see. The second poll question we had was, and Paul talked a lot about this in his presentation around account prioritization, particularly for sales teams, and knowing kind of where they should be focusing their efforts based on the accounts that are, showing those active in market sort of signals. So the next poll question is, how much time does your sales team spend researching rather than selling? And that's, let's say these are each day. So 2 to 4 hours, 5 to 9 hours, or 10 plus hours. And let's give that some time to run as well. Can see some results coming in. Yeah, so most people, and this is roughly kind of time per day, so 2 to 4 hours per day. That's quite a big chunk out of the day that they're spending on researching. Around 14% is around 5 to 9 hours, so that's a huge amount, and 10 hours plus as well. But majority is 2 to 4 hours. So that's a huge amount of time. Just think about, with something like account intelligence, just how much of that time can be saved, really focusing on those right accounts. Okay, a couple more questions, poll questions to answer. The next one is, how much of your company's budget is spent marketing to companies that your business can't sell to? So is it 10 to 20% of your budget, 21 to 40%, 41 to 60%, or if you're unsure, just say don't know. Let's have a look. This is a really interesting one. So the majority of answers here, so 70% are saying don't know. So it could be that, that's quite a high percentage, but also something just to, definitely be aware of. 17% are saying 10 to 20%, 8% is 41 to 60%, and 4% is 21 to 40% as well. So I think, again, that's just key thinking about, it's really about applying that kind of account lens to everything that you're doing and thinking about, am I spending my money in the best way? Am I going to get the greatest return? Are these really the right accounts that I should be, actively marketing and trying to sell to? And then the final poll question that we have, this is around digital advertising. So for digital ad campaigns, what is most relevant to your business? And pick the one that's most relevant to you. So I don't know who sees my ads. I just report anonymous click-through rates. I don't know where my ads are shown and if they are on brand safe places, or I cannot report if an account saw our ad or how much budget I have spent on them. So just pick one that's the most relevant for you. Let's have a look at some of the responses. People are still answering. But it looks like the majority, so 45 is going up, 46%. So majority of people are saying, I cannot report if an account saw an ad or how much budget I have spent on them as well. So yeah, really obviously key to get that insight, because it definitely helps are my digital campaigns effective? Are they working? Are they going to the right accounts? Is our budget being spent in the right way? And also to help you just, having that kind of insight to help you get more budget for future programs, to actually report on the success of your campaigns, is if they are working well or not. So thank you for participating in our poll question. I think we've got time for our next session now, so I'll hand it over to Jacob.
Thank you, Paul and Leanne. Awesome to hear all the insights there from demand base and the in and outs of how to apply intent data, etc. Moving on in the agenda now, it's time for Bright Vision's expert in ABM to continue this topic. And just a short introduction to Bright Vision for those of you who haven't come across us before. Maybe this is your first virtual event that you visit. We typically have one each month or similar to that. So I know quite a few of you have visited us before. But we're an agency that works with technology companies in B2B. It can be tech companies with products, but also to a large extent SaaS companies and subscription-based businesses in the tech and IT area. So that's what we do. And we work for companies like here are some of our clients. So you can see what kind of typical clients we're working with. So we have a specialization to help them. And we're a full circle company working with both inbound services as well as outbound, trying to deliver leads, drive demand, and ultimately grow their revenue. So we're pretty much a growth agency where we focus on growth in different areas together with our clients. And now I have the pleasure to present my colleague, Mike Zimmerman, who is one of our ABM consultants and experts, and working with a lot of clients in this area, helping them setting up strategies as well as campaigns and retainers in order to drive growth. And she's managing several important clients here at Bright Vision. So with that short introduction, Mike, the stage is yours.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Jacob, for the intro. I summarized the session around the 3 most frequently asked questions but also the other project managers get when it comes to ABM collaborations. And they are, how do we run a first pilot? How do we build this into a program? And what are the general best practices for ABM strategies? So these are the 3 questions that will guide us today. And let me start at the beginning for when you're preparing a pilot. So if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your ABM strategy you've launched too late. So if there was only one thing that I was allowed to really tell our clients when preparing for a pilot, it would probably be this, given we can take it with a sense of humor. But this alter quote from Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, shows the idea to not only approach a strategy with a lean and agile mindset, but also summarizes all the best practices I'll share with you today. And maybe one driving thought that will make preparing for a pilot significantly easier is to remember that perfection does not exist, and it likely also does not need to exist for a pilot project. So before we cover the how, I wanted to talk about the what. So when we talk to our clients, we are frequently asked what's the right scope, the right investment, the right approach, the right budget. And the short answer is that every initiative will look different from the next. And that's due to various reasons, including your team size, your company structure, your target audience, your budget, and so forth. And different does not mean better or worse. And in our opinion, a pilot manager, a successful pilot manager, will understand what it is that their team can and also want to do. So you have to strike that balance between being ambitious and being realistic when it comes to running an ABM pilot. So here you can see 3 examples of campaigns that we have been running, and they have been in different countries and different industries, all in Europe though, so that might be important to mention. And the reason why it is also good to mention that they were in different industries is because it might help you to actually determine which number of accounts is a good way to start for you. So for example, this first client here was targeting existing clients in one language in Sweden. And naturally, that makes for a bit of a smaller list than, for example, here the third client who focused on cold account acquisition in the Benelux region. So the second client, for example, we started out with 15 accounts and then over time sort of narrowed it down as the others weren't really showing that willingness or readiness to really engage with that client just yet. So this also brings me to my second point about what a pilot should look like. Budget is a huge factor in deciding how it can be executed, as I assume most of you know. And just to give an example, so for the second collaboration, we settled on promoting the campaign primarily in paid digital channels, as this was the most cost-efficient way to sort of test the first AB elements at the time. So if you think about it, that pilot was really an account-based advertising campaign, but for this client at this time, it was already a significant step towards ABM and more self-sufficient marketing, as they were previously more dependent on referrals from partners to make sales. So when creating your pilot target account list, keep thinking about the common denominators between the accounts. And if you struggle to identify the common denominators, then it might be that your list is too big for a pilot campaign. And the other thing that helps you to sort of decide the scope of the pilot is to look at the existing relationship with sales. So here, for example, the first client, they had a really close-knit team that was fully excited to work together on this new project. So it was a lot easier for the teams to focus on customers they already had, sort of expanding those accounts as you go. To sum up, ABM pilots are as unique as sort of the companies that run them, but there are a few best practices that can help your team decide what scope and setup is right for you. So adding to my previous point about how to run a pilot, I brought this spectrum with me. And I know I'm risking to oversimplify behavioral science, but I do like the spectrum because it shows the range between 2 different types of approaches, individuals and also companies. And here you have the planner and the doer. And the planner strives for perfection, doing everything in their power to control the future and the outcomes of certain activities, including ABM pilots. And they plan for perfection, essentially. So the planner can say something like this before running an activity. So that, however, can lead to activities never happening. And, you know, companies or teams that are only focusing on the planning side of things and getting organized do run the risk of getting stuck and stagnate and launching their pilot too late or with too rigid structures. So as I mentioned, the pilot is also a learning experience. So if you overplan, you don't allow for testing, experimenting, and learning. So in contrast, the doer wants to make things happen, take action, get things out of the door as quickly as possible. And the doer knows that perfection is a myth and doesn't care as much about getting organized and setting the groundwork structures. So in practice, these 2 people can be presented in one team, in one company, even in one person. And the planner is not better than a doer or vice versa. In fact, I would argue that you need both people on either side of the spectrum in a team to find a good balance, right? And the reason why I'm referring back to this behavioral science topic when I'm talking about ABM is that we at Bright Vision have seen that it's an important part of running a pilot for ABM or other strategies to find sort of the different perspective in your team. And that said, you might also want to refer back to this when picking an agency for support or hiring additional team members. So before we talk about ABM program, let me round up by sharing some best practices and answering the guiding question. And let's assume you and your team have already taken the first hurdle, which is deciding that ABM is your next strategy. And the second step should be to scope out what needs to be done to be able to run a pilot. So independent of what it looks like, one advice that we do like to give our clients, especially those who struggle to get internal buy-in, is treat the pilot as a proof of concept. You don't need everybody to be excited about it just yet. Get one salesperson or one manager involved and then explore what you can do with that scope. So I'll cut some of these points a little bit short so we make sure we stay on time. But maybe the first point here is that I don't think it'll come as a surprise to most of you for me to point out that an ideal or like a defined ideal customer profile and a defined buyer persona are best practices for a pilot. So if your team doesn't have that, or you're not even sure what I'm referring to at this point, you might want to do some additional research before launching an ABM pilot. And this point also refers to the target account lists for your ABM pilot. So gather as much intelligence as you can and be really clear on your common denominators. So for the second point about setting it up in CRM and ad platforms, when we think about a pilot, you probably don't need an elaborate ABM tool, especially not if it's the first time doing such an activity. That said, if you can afford it and can afford it to have the in-house capabilities to actually use that tool, then that's amazing and you should go for it. However, don't make it a reason as to why you can't launch your first pilot. That said, however, you should be able to track your website performance and your ad performance with actual conversion tracking. So the collaboration with sales, as I mentioned, it doesn't need to be the whole team. Start with one team member if needed and practice alignment during the pilot so you can later build it into a program. So for the project milestones, it refers back to the structures that are needed to run a pilot and actually grow from there. So have a defined and limited scope and make your initiative time-bound. We usually suggest 4 to 6 months, but it can be longer. And thinking back to the two extremes in the spectrum that I showed you, plan well for your milestones, but also remain flexible enough to adjust and do as things come. And as a last point, the learning and insights. So at Bright Vision, we consider this a best practice as well. And I'll share with you what we mean. So decide what you want to learn from this pilot beforehand and do write it down. Really write a list of all the things that you and your team want to find out that isn't performance related. And it's easy to say what you want to learn, and then it's difficult to show the progression from the pilot. But learning is also an aspect and a value that will help you achieve better performance in the long run. So, and that's not on a list, but I'm thinking of it is that you should advocate early and honestly. So by the time you finished your pilot, you want the broad team to be already aware of what you've been doing, especially if your plan is to implement it into a broader strategy approach. So do make sure that there are educational materials available for the rest of the team and slowly involve more and more people as you go. So even when we cover all these best practices, we also encourage to ask the question if it can be repeated and if it can be scaled. So having talked about the pilot, let's quickly wrap up with the program. And essentially, a program is a mapped out version of your growth strategy, right? So one question we also discuss a lot in our team internally is how and when does a pilot become a program, right? How do we know if we have a pilot or a program? And so this is not a complete framework, but when you begin to grow from one or multiple pilots into a more program, so an actual use of ABM as a growth strategy, you can look at 3 different aspects. So first, ABM is a long-term growth strategy. So this point, I think, doesn't need much explanation, but just to summarize, a campaign will cover one aspect at a given time, and a program will be part of your overall strategy and be implemented a lot deeper and wider than one single campaign. The other thing is that pilots jump ahead. Yes, it is possible to generate quick results from ABM, but it's unrealistic to expect them. So pilots usually have a much shorter duration, and it's much more of a proof of concept for developing a program. So you won't be able to get the same results with a pilot. And as we just heard from Paul in his talk, that by the time your prospects actually turn into leads, they've already quite the journey behind them. So for a pilot, it might be acceptable to jump in at any time of that journey, but a program should cover it all. And then for the last point, culture and attitude, for ABM to be a success, there needs to be a culture within your organization that allows for testing and learning. And if you sort of work in an all or nothing culture where the potential for ABM lives and dies on the success of your pilot, it might be a difficult environment for you to implement ABM as a long-term strategy. So let me elaborate briefly on the differences between a pilot and a program. So looking at this simplified graph of a company's ABM campaigns over time and their varying performance, you can see that these standalone campaigns aren't directly connected. And this is very much a way of running ABM, but according to our definition, this is not necessarily a program. So to compare that with this graph, we can see that there are multiple campaigns that fit within a program. And do note that even with the best program, the performance will vary. Within a program, however, it would be fatal to consider the campaigns only on their individual performance, right? Within a program, campaigns are connected, and that doesn't mean that they're connected by topic, but rather that the team collectively uses the experiences from the last campaign into the next and then grows together in the long run. So I will give you a possible answer to the guiding question. So when it comes to building a program for your company or unit, think about one simple mantra: fail fast, succeed faster. Some of you have probably already heard this before, and there has also been a book written about this. But while it's not directly applicable to a pilot campaign, for a program it is. As I said, a program is a long-term strategy, and therefore it needs to support both your short-term and your long-term goals. So here's a bit of a summary of the different aspects that you can look at. And one thing that maybe isn't as clear is I will just elaborate on the commitment and patience point. So the last point here on this list touches sort of upon the expectation management within the team and within your management level. So in order to build an ABM program, so essentially a new growth strategy for sales and marketing, you need commitment and tenacity. I can say this, I see this a lot with my client, where from a pilot implementing it into a program, it does take some time, and that is just natural. And implementing ABM as a growth strategy is also a fair deal of change management that needs to happen. So also be patient with your other team members if they're not getting as quickly excited as you are maybe already. To all ABM ambassadors out there, be committed and build commitment within other teams, even already during the pilots, but do be patient. And I know, trust me, I am fully aware that this is easier said than done, but I'm sure it is going to happen. So to summarize, adopt a crawl, walk, run approach to your ABM tactics, and especially your strategy, especially when you're trying to move from a pilot to a program. So that was it for me. Thank you very much. We had to cut it a little bit short, but now there might still be a minute to answer maybe one or two questions.
Thank you so much, Mikey. We have a few questions here in the chat. So one question is, what are the next steps after running a pilot?
Yeah, that's a good question. So usually when you're done with your pilot or you're sort of towards the end of it, we do recommend that prepare for the next step while the pilot is still running, right? You don't want to stop the pilot and then suddenly sit there and don't know what to do next and lose that momentum that you might have built in your team. So start preparing for the next steps early while the pilot is happening. And as one key step is also to look at what you've learned from the pilot, look at the data, see what has worked and what hasn't worked, and which of the things that worked you want to take onto your next step, and which of the things that haven't worked you want to do differently.
And just another one here. Do you have any tips for, or actually, I'll just jump over one. Let's take this one. What can you do if a pilot is not successful or doesn't meet the expectations?
So I think it's both. It's important to look a little bit at what were the expectations. As I said, yes, they can be ambitious, but they also need to be realistic. So especially when it comes to a pilot, see, okay, did you consider secondary goals as success as well? Because just because the pilot didn't generate as many leads as you wanted to doesn't mean that it was a failure as a whole. So I think looking a little bit at that, and then of course gather both qualitative data. So speak to your team, and also see what they think what went wrong. Maybe, all your content was amazing, but the internal structures weren't quite up where you would want them to be. And then the second part, of course, do look at your data that you have and your advertising platforms on your website analytics tool to see, okay, how did the people behave? Maybe when did they drop off in our flow? So you can sort of use both qualitative and quantitative data to draw a conclusion.
All right. And maybe a very quick one. Do you have any tips for actions that will immediately improve the ABM result?
As I said, there are no quick results with ABM. It does take some time. But maybe one thing is that will help you to improve as you go is to optimize. We sometimes see that people plan something, push it out the door, and then just months later look at it again. So you can also shape your results as you go. So don't be, so maybe one quick fix that when your campaign isn't going well right now, don't hesitate to make changes as you go. Don't just sit back and see the problem unfold in front of you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mikey.
Yeah, thank you too.
So the next speaker to present is actually already on the virtual stage. Is the CEO and founder of Bright Vision, as well as the event host today, Jakob Löwenbrand. Jakob is an expert in marketing for tech companies, and he has more than 20 years of experience in helping SaaS and tech companies to succeed with B2B lead generation processes. And in his presentation today, he will dive into the topic of orchestrating a multinational outbound SDR team successfully. So take it away, Jakob.
Thank you so much, Maria. And thank you, everybody, for sticking around to the last session here. Sorry for the technical challenges we've had. Hopefully, we can run this last session a bit smoother. So, orchestrating a multinational outbound SDR team successfully, a long title for a short session of 20-25 minutes. So I'll try to be brief and take the overview of this. So I've been working with outbound and B2B marketing for tech companies for close to 25 years now. We started Bright Vision in 2000, so we are on our 22nd year. And we have picked up a few things that we have done over the years there. But one common topic is, of course, scaling sales. And why is it important to scale sales and continue to grow as a tech company or a SaaS company? Well, it's important because if you become the category leader in your space, in your market space, where you compete with the other ones that define themselves in your category, you will end up as a much bigger company, much bigger market cap, a lot of the best references and clients and so forth, and you will establish yourself as a long-term successful company. It's so important in technology to be one of the front runners, if not possible to be the leader in the category. So it's important to grow, especially when you're in a high growth segment or category. If you're a venture capital based company and you're potentially in the future looking for another round or rounds of financing, it's even more important to grow your revenue. Why? Because revenue is the primary driver of tech companies' valuations. We have a multiple now on B2B tech companies. This is a historic overview, the last 5 years up until December 21. What multiples of EBITDA and revenue that is typically, in average, the valuation of tech companies. And as we can see right now, in December, now we have had a little bit of turmoil, as you know, after New Year. But up until December, we had an average valuation of 4 times the revenue. If you're a SaaS company, it's even higher. Up until December, it was around 8 to 9 times the revenue. So that means that if you can increase your revenue with $1 million, the valuation of the company goes up times 8. So that's so important to drive the revenue growth before closing the next financing round. Okay, so yes, we all need to grow fast. Now what? Well, in that case, you need to set up and run a well-oiled, efficient sales machine that has all the components to do that. And that's what's so important with the SDR team, and try to do that in a scalable way in multinational countries. So we typically talk about this as an act of orchestration, because there's so many moving parts you need to get in place in order to be able to scale your sales process. It's so tightly together, knit together with the marketing, and there's different roles in the sales. So I will talk about 3 aspects of the sales process here today in order to be able to do this orchestration act. And it's people, platform, and process. It's really high concepts, but a lot of stuff in there under it. If we start with people, the SDR team and the supporting roles in order to get this outbound orchestration to happen and to get it to work smoothly so you can grow faster. We have a few different roles here that we definitely talk a lot about. We have the BDR, who's primarily an outbound-driven prospector who is doing phone calls, emails, and of course, to some extent, social, but it's primarily phone and email-driven role. The SDR have turned out to become more the same thing, but more heavily weighting in on social selling, LinkedIn prospecting, email prospecting, cadence, etc., using tools and systems in order to do that. But they're doing the same thing, driving leads, booking demos, and connecting to potential prospects. The account executive, the AE, that's the person who is actually sending the proposals, doing the demos, closing the deals, and so forth. So that's the 2 roles that are driving this outbound orchestration engine if you want to be a fast sales setup. So the 2 roles, so I will talk about SDRs now, but I do include BDR or any other DR acronym, whether it's MDRs, ADRs, etc. It's pretty much the same, but the whole idea you get. So one question to discuss if you set up a team around this is, what's the ratio between SDRs to account executives? Most companies that's in middle range pricing for B2B sales would benefit from a 1-to-1 ratio in average. That's mostly what we recommend. If you're upper scale in enterprise sales with expensive products, etc., you can have less SDRs. And if you're in the lower scale where you have a lot of transactions and quite quick close ratio, sales cycles with a lot of closes and things like that, you can need more than 1, maybe 2-to-1 or 1.5-to-1 in order to fill the pipeline. Maybe you can process like 8 to 10 meetings a day if you're in lower pricing range as AE. In combination to this, you need supporting roles to these core sales teams in order to get them working efficiently. And I will talk a bit more about this in the process section I will come back to, but we need copywriters, RevOps, we need sales coaching, data analytics and data analysts, we need team leaders, we need campaign strategists, and paid media and digital specialists that can support the sales efforts with all the moving parts that needs to be in place. Paul did a great job to explaining a few of these things that demand-based do and can be a missing link in the areas here. But one role that is important, and I think demand-based also did a good job explaining how a lot of different system needs to be put together, is the RevOps role. It's probably the newest one of these roles, supporting roles. We have a RevOps team here at Bright Vision that works together both internally for our own sake, but also together with clients to put the pieces together, the different systems, the different data sources, the different tools and the tech stacks that we need to have to work seamlessly for the BDRs, SDRs, and AEs, so we can leverage the technology and the data we have access to. And that is very complicated and quite a lot of things around there you need to know. and work with. So that's why RevOps is becoming a role in itself. So definitely worth considering if you haven't invested in a RevOps role, at least to part-time maybe. If you also scale a team, you need to understand that it's really hard to scale it. It's hard to recruit, and it's hard to find people if you want to cover many countries, as we do in Europe. And each country has its own challenges. So we don't have the same sales culture in the Nordics as in Germany, as in UK, as in Spain or Italy. It has its nuances. It has its own sales cycle. So you need to be able to adapt both the team, of course, especially around fluency in local language, but also how you drive and set KPIs and use different sales languages. That is so important, and having things around that so you can do that in a good way. So when you start a new country, and when you add a new country to this sales process, start small and try to learn fast, set up new experimentation and tests and hypotheses. And then when you get things moving and you're closing in on your KPIs that you think are reasonable goals for this country in comparison to the other ones that you're doing well, then you expand from there and do so. So that's one of our key cornerstones here at Bright Vision. Start small, but learn fast and expand when you know you can. Otherwise, you will, of course, pay a little bit too much. Moving on to the SDR tech stack. This is a big topic, and we have already talked a lot about the demand base and the different things you can do in there. But that is only one part of the SDR tech stack, to be honest. We, of course, have seen, most of us have seen this map on the marketing technology landscape that's coming out actually in a few weeks' time and updated for 2022. But as you know, we have seen an explosion of marketing apps and software coming out over the last 10 years. What is less known is that we have had the exact same explosion of technology coming out is on the sales side of things. The marketing side and the sales side is of course tightly connected, but we do see a lot of sales technology coming out that making life easier for SDRs, BDRs, and AEs in different areas. And I will show you a little bit about the things going on here that you might consider when setting up a sales tech stack for SDRs. I had the privilege to interview Tony Hughes from Australia, who is one of the absolutely best experts I know about when it's come to tech stacks for salespersons in B2B sales. He quite recently released a book that he co-authored called Tech Powered Sales. And he have found out that today in Silicon Valley, where maybe we have the most aggressive adoption of sales technology today, in average, a high growth company there spends $1,000 in tech costs per rep and month. But as the technology curve goes in the tech area today for sales technology, he predicts that will actually go up to $5,000 in the coming years, because there's so much technology coming out that probably will become more or less ubiquitous for B2B salespersons. So that's Tony Hughes. Another company that do a lot of analysis around SDRs and AE work is the Bridge Group. And they have found out in their latest report that the median sales tech stack consists of a CRM plus 5 additional tools. That could be demand-based, of course, but it could also be other ones. So what kind of tools is that? Well, in their adoption curve here that they have done, we see that LinkedIn Navigator or Sales Navigator or LinkedIn Premium is kind of every man's tool today. We have an adoption rate around 80% of all B2B sales organizations today using that. Then we have the sales engagement platforms as a number 2 there. I will soon come back to that. We also have sales intelligence of different kinds, account and contact data. I would include intent data and platforms like Demandbase in there. We have different supporting software like calendar and scheduling apps. We have call recording and conversation analytics, where you actually can get an AI sales coach helping you to find strong words or using the right acronyms or things that actually automatically gives you feedback on your sales dialogue. It's not available in every language yet, but the speed of development in the AI technology of speech recognition is going really, really fast. So that's a very exciting area. We also see a lot of other stuff coming along here. For example, chatbots like Drift that integrates really well with CRM systems and things like that. Learning platforms, onboarding the team and learning them and continuously investing in upskilling and reskilling around tools and methodologies is really important to these organizations today as well. So a lot of investments goes into more or less LMS platforms that's tailored towards sales and SDR roles and so forth. Lessonly is probably one of the leading providers in that space. So let's have a little bit of a look at the sales engagement platforms that are pretty much most B2B sales organization an extra tool, just like Sales Navigator is today. And if you look at the G2 grid for sales engagement platforms, there is, as in every category these days, a lot of providers and players that offer platforms that complement CRM systems with cadences, email automation, account insights, where you can connect third-party databases in a more easy way so actually have actionable data, so you can get the intent data connected and so forth. So, for example, we can see up here that we have a few providers there, and two of the leading ones, apart from HubSpot, which is a big company in all categories, is Outreach and SalesLoft. If there's two providers, if you just want to do a quick review of a few providers, these are good to start with. There's a lot of other ones that are cheaper and almost as good, but these are some of the most biggest market share leaders in this space. And we are using primarily SalesLoft, but have also used Outreach to a little bit extent. But we're continuously evaluating different platforms in this space. So we use different platforms for different campaigns and when the environment is different, a little bit different. So we can use the best one for suiting the client and the topic and the goals we're going after in that specific campaigns. So that's what you need to consider from a tech stack perspective. Okay, so let's tie this together in a process. So we have a tech stack that's hopefully having all the data we need. We have the tools we need in order to be able to do good work. We have BDRs and SDRs in the different languages, recruited and onboarded, and we have AEs, and we have a team leader. So now let's tie this together with a process. And there are 6 parts in our process I think you should have a checklist on and make sure you have worked out in detail before you start selling. So what we typically try to do here is to talk about the 6 steps of these phases as our process, or just say our process for a multinational SDR orchestration team. And where do we start? We start with the data of the clients. We need to define our ideal client profile and try to find the data. Where is that one? So in that area, we need to, of course, define it, but also find demographic data and firmographic data, and also maybe technographic data on if it's applying systems and things like that. And this is a really simple overview of the 2 things that is important in defining your target ideal client profile. Ideal client profile is on the company level, and then you need to add on which are the titles, or other words, buyer personas within that organization that we're going after. So we have a narrative that focuses on the both parts of it. And when we develop data, especially for multinational campaigns in Europe, we use in average 5 data sources because they're so hard to find one single source of data that covers many countries, and different areas of businesses and so forth. So we use different multiple databases set and import the parts and set them together. Some databases are good at companies, some are better on contacts, some are good at technology and profiling and so forth. So it might differ. So we need to have data analysts in our data analytics and insight team that puts that together to our clients and their SDR teams. If you're moving to the next part there, supporting with sales data, that's when we have the core data set of the companies and the titles and so forth, the buyer personas, we want to put the intelligence upon it, like intent data, just like Paul talked about. Who is actually in some kind of active process looking for providers in this and that area? Do we see that they are using keywords or doing searches? Do we have trigger events? Do we connect any information from our marketing automation platforms where we see visitors coming in that actually have information that should get them prioritized for our sales team to be worked on a lot sooner than other prospects in that data set? So that's so important that we work with that. Moving on to the next one. Campaign strategy is so much more important these days than it were a few years back. When we contact companies today, we need to be more unique, having better value propositions, more worked through sales messages and narratives than ever before, because there's so many companies out there chasing the attention for our prospects. That's why you need to have professional copywriters and professional designers helping you doing the emails and the supporting content and so forth. And so you can link to that and have a really good thought through process all the way through. The days when the BDRs themselves put together a little bit of outlines here and there, if you're not really good at that as a BDR or AE, you need to have professional help from a sales copywriting team who can help you think through all the different cadences of emails and social touches and things like that, so we can do it in a smart and coherent way all the way through. And communication cadence design is so important as well, because in the next step, we are going to decide. So yes, we need to be creative and use the tools we have to our to our ability. Because when we choose which channels are we going to talk with our clients in, are we going to talk to clients over phone? Pretty much most of the times we do that. And that is still the most efficient way. If you see how many qualitative dialogues per hour in general we produce, in combination to if you compare it to social selling and how many dialogues we strike up from LinkedIn, etc., etc. So phone is important, but a lot of campaigns these days are also mostly email and social selling driven. So typically, we do add both phone, email, and social selling to many campaigns we do today. And more are also using paid ads and targeted ads, either through LinkedIn ABM efforts, but also third-party platforms like Demandbase, where you can go after IP targeting and things like that. Also using intelligent landing pages where you can put up content that refers to the ones you have information on, and you can be intelligent in how to enhance your messaging there. And also email deliverability is more important than ever. So many things we need to do in order to get our email through. So we're using different technology platforms in order to make sure that we don't send too many emails, that we do use the right domains and things like that. So we have a high deliverability score. And I think that's one area a lot of companies misses today. So also a word on email sequencers. When using Salesloft or Outreach or other platforms that have the email sequence tools where you can pretty much put on an automatic robot sending out email templates to everybody who you have on your list, or that triggers something in your system or so. And you can put in a 10-step email cadence there very, very easily today. And this is something that have been overly used. So as you know, you receive a lot of templated emails. So be aware of, do not use them lightly, do not send too many. And our thumb of rule is that 20% of every email that goes out needs to be personalized. And by that, we don't mean putting in a token that says, "Hi, Jacob." We mean that the first and second sentence should be something that is in context for that specific person you're sending out the email to. So you need to do that manual work on every email. That's what we recommend, and that's where we see the best results. Apart from that, you can use tokens and standardized, well-written emails, of course. And the same goes for LinkedIn emails and things like that. So it's so dangerous to think that, wow, I can blast out 4,000 emails this month by just clicking a few buttons and do the templates and bam, everything goes out. Well, it won't produce the result you're hoping for because it's too templated, too robot stylish. So you need to put in the work there. I will be happy to share examples with you if you're interested in this area afterwards. And campaign optimization. It's so important that when we do run a big SDR outreach in different countries, we need to constantly optimize and see how are things going in this country and that country. Are we doing any best practice benchmarking? Why are we so successful in Germany? And why are we lagging in Norway? And so forth. So we constantly optimize and try to learn from each other and compare also best practices and insights that we do continuously. And that's the role of the product manager. And of course, also peer-to-peer discussions between the sales team on how we do things in a good way. How are you responding to this question? How do you strike up interest in your conversations and so forth? So that's a constant thing that needs to go on. Also, having an experimentational lean process, so to say, where you do A/B testing and ongoing experimentation and hypothesis testing. Why is it possible to improve this conversion rate? How can we even get more on the phone and so forth? So today we need to be very experimental and not just settle for this is how it goes, just put in the work. No, we need to every week have an evaluation of this. And the last part, of course, reporting upwards in the organization. Are we actually getting return on investment? Are we having a highly account penetration on the most important accounts we're going after? Do we see a pipeline grow and so forth? These are things that are so important for upper management, CFOs, CMOs, CSOs, or CEOs to understand, because these can be pretty big investments. And of course, if we're closing business and we see the sales cycle is short enough to actually drive revenue, it's quite easy to set up these KPIs. And we have done for several clients. So please reach out if you want to have examples of setting up KPI reporting that satisfies the CXO suite of inside sales and SDR processes. But it's so important to keep them in the loop and make everybody understand what's going on. So to sum up, people plus platform plus process. If you do those things, and there's so many things under each area that could be a full day event in itself. Well, if you do that well and you try to check the most boxes, that creates a fast scaling sales process, as long as you have a strong offering, of course. Otherwise, it might be hard anyway. But as long as you have a pretty good product that there is a market demand for, you will create a pretty well-fueled, fast scaling sales process. So the question now is, if you want to go down this road and build this process, should you build it in-house and hire everybody as an employee? Should you outsource to a company like Bright Vision or somebody else? Or should you go hybrid, maybe doing a little bit of everything? But there's pros and cons with every of the alternatives. One thing we have seen that is very attractive to going hybrid and using an external outsourcer to do parts of the SDR work is that we can be a fractional resource in comparison to in-house resources that most likely will be full-time employees and have a more heavy loaded cost and the longer onboarding, etc. So when exploring new countries and trying to figure out, should we do an attempt to win this market or that market? Should we go into the DACH regions? Should we go to the Benelux or some other European countries? We can set up a half-time SDR to do a first attempt there, together with some light supporting marketing or some light work that will give us a hunch about that market and if it's worthwhile doubling down on that and building a team for real. So fractional SDR teams might be a good way to complement if you're going down the hybrid route. Otherwise, we can, of course, set up a fully outsourced solution as well. What is new here at Bright Vision over the last 6 months is that we also offer a 360 SaaS sales team that actually can do both the parts of bringing in the demos, setting up the meetings, but also where you can hire an account executive in local language that is fluent and actually close the sales, as long as it's a medium complex solution, of course. So for a lot of SaaS sales companies, this is a really good way to go forward if you want to scale really fast, because then we can be up and running in 30 days in many countries. And that also needs data analysts that can provide the data and work with the insights of which country accounts should be prioritized, how can you find good data in different countries, and so forth, and finding the right contacts to go after, which is a lot of work if you're going multinational. So that is one learning. You should not underestimate the cost and the investment you need to do in the data in order to be successful in many countries at the same time. That was a little bit of the insights I had with me here today. So thank you so much for listening in. And let's see if there's any questions to follow up on this.
Thank you, Jacob. We do have a few questions, and we have one here. Any big pitfalls to look out for when orchestrating an outbound SDR team?
Oh, there are many. And I think there's a lot of things you need to think about, and when you do build an SDR team, but it's important to understand that it's not the same role as a salesperson. It's not the same type of personality many times. So what I see sometimes is that people hire for AEs, but don't acknowledge the specific competencies and personalities that SDRs and BDRs need to have. So it's not the same person. It's not the same way to structure the service, the roles and so forth. So that could be one pitfall. And also another pitfall is that if you don't get that right, you will have a lot of turnover in the SDR role because they want to go to the account executive role as soon as possible because they're closers. They want to do the setting out the proposals, etc. So that is one major pitfall, to understand what is the role and what is the best profile of that candidate we are looking for, and try to source that candidates in a good way. So try to make the SDR role a career path in itself that don't necessarily need to go to an AE as soon as possible. I think that's a pitfall a lot of in-house organizations do.
All right. And what do you think all SDRs should keep in mind when they're making outbound sales calls?
Try to be brief, try to be on point, and be well researched before picking up the phone or whatever way you're contacting the person you're trying to strike up a dialogue with, and be humble and not taking it for granted that they are interested or have a need. But hopefully you have some indications that this company and that role will have an interest of the problems you're targeting and that you have solved for similar roles and titles before. So try to be proposing your value prop as soon as possible and try to see if that's a match so you can get a few more hours. So you're not selling the system the first thing you do. You're trying to sell a few minutes interest to get the interest, and then you get a demo, and at the demo you try to sell the system, so to say. So it's a little bit of a step-by-step process. We only want to sell the next step.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. I think that was our last session for today. And before we round this off, it would be great to just hear a little bit if somebody would like to share. Did you get any insights? Did you learn anything today that you could take with you? Or did you want to highlight something? Or if you have any more questions that we might be able to answer afterwards going forward. So we'll let you have 30 seconds to see if there's anybody who wants to. Okay, not so much. But anyway, we have these two offers that we talked about in the beginning. Demandbase have a 25 platform discount if you interested in signing up for their software called Demandbase One. And they also have a great report there. And we at Bright Vision, we will love to offer our competencies for free for a few hours and maybe toss around some ideas around in this area, how to build a great SDR team, how to scale your sales faster, how to integrate sales and marketing better, how to set up the right data sources and things like that. If you have any questions in this area, we would be happy to help out for a few hours. And we also can, of course, do a bigger workshop if you're interested, and you can get 25% off of that as well. So thank you so much. And I hope everybody have had a great day. And thank you, Vincent, for that comment, that it's so important to personalize your emails. I think that's, do not put on repeat when it comes to email sequencing software, because it won't get you anywhere rather than getting opted out at your most important prospects. So try to be genuine, try to be personalized, try to be creative. That's what computers can't offer. They can't be smart about EQ. They can be very good at intelligence and automation. But we as sales professionals and marketing professionals, we are the creative brains that need to get things going around these messaging and narratives and value props. So keep that in mind. You cannot automate away that part of the sales process. Thank you so much. It was a blast to have you with us here today. And hopefully we'll see you soon again. Bright Vision have a new event in 4 weeks' time around Partner Marketing Day. So stick around and hopefully see you in a few weeks' time then. Thank you so much and have a great day.